I'm Emil Gomez. We're going to be talking about computers today here at our CTA training, our second training class. Emphasis on the computer. We'll do some tax work as well, a little bit of tax work. Two parts of this class. One is to go over the mechanics, more or less, of how to use our tax layer program. Afterwards, Tom, our tech guru, will go over the process of preparing returns virtually, because most of our returns will be prepared virtually. My part of the class is kind of free-flowing. Make sure you take a lot of notes. Tom has a formal presentation set up for his part of the class. So what I wanted to mention is, again, as part of your homework, you guys should have reviewed the checklist. And did you guys come up with anything? What did you see about this checklist or its shortcomings? Okay. I take a New York minute if you guys can look at the materials again, compare the documentation for our taxpayer Johnson to this checklist on Johnson itself. Okay. There is something wrong. Let me put it that way, or something that should be brought to everyone's attention. Maybe another 30 seconds. I don't want to give it that long of a shot. Okay, what I want to emphasize is what's seen here on page 2 of the checklist. Okay, take a look at the taxable interest amount. Okay, we had withholdings, right, on this person's interest income, his 1099 amount. Guys, remember that? Okay, so we know the interest for the year for the 1099 interest form is $560, correct? But what's the federal withholding on that? It is not $56, it is $5.06, or rounded up to $6, which you can see that this part is incorrect. Whoever prepared this, I think it was me, put in the early withdrawal penalty being the withholding amount, which makes this incorrect, which makes this total incorrect. Why is that important? Because somebody like me, as a manager now, reviews this information and makes sure the information here flows to the return. So I know this is not correct, right? So let's talk about where do we put the early withdrawal penalty, right? Remember that, guys? It's here on page 3 of the checklist, right over there where you see where the cursor is, okay? Do you see $56 here? You don't. So that's a second error in this checklist itself. Okay, a manager who reviews this.
Emil, I just want to stop you. You're not sharing the documents that you're discussing.
Okay, sorry. Let's try this, and let's try this, and how about that? Better? Checklist? Yes, you can. Okay, right? Is that right, Keisha?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Learning about sharing, I have to stop and start sharing each time I want to share a document. Anyway. So getting back to the checklist, this number here, $56, is not the withholdings that you see on the 1099 interest form, right? It is $5.06, so that should be $6. And what does that mean? It means this number is incorrect, and a manager will pick that up when he reviews this. Where do we put the $56, the early withdrawal penalty that you see on Mr. Johnson's 1099 interest form? It goes here on page 3, right over there in this line. And as you can see, nothing is there, which means that's a second error, okay? And as long as we're on page 3, let's take a look at this line here. Well, we know this person, based on these numbers here, is not gonna itemize because his standard deduction is more than his itemized. So of course, we remember last week, we'll use the itemized deductions, larger amount, lowers income subject to tax even more. Okay, but take a look at this. Remember that special rule that we talked about people who make cash contributions and can prove it, up to $300 or $600 for married filing jointly people? They can reduce their AGI or reduce even the income subject to tax by this amount here, up to those limits. So apparently this person made $52 in cash contributions. And there's a little note here too, okay? Provided a receipt. Now, the question for me is, since we did see an error here in the checklist and here in this document, let's see how it looks on the return itself, okay? So let me try to stop sharing this and share the return itself. So let's do that. And let's try that. No, that's not it. I'm sorry. Let's try, whoops, share. Okay, that's a checklist again. I think the best way to do this is to go to TaxSlayer itself. Okay, let's do that, guys. Okay. Let's try to go to TaxSlayer. Sorry, I thought I had it up. Oh, here it is, up and running. Can you guys see the TaxSlayer screen?
Not right now.
Hold on. Okay, there we are. TaxSlayer, right? Okay, so let us look at Mr. Johnson's return. And we're here at TaxSlayer. And again, this is what you guys are going to see. Let's go to Mr. Johnson's return, and then we're going to come back to this screen, and then I'm going to show you with our second return itself that we're going to enter from scratch how our program works. How do we go to get Mr. Johnson's return? We'll go to Client Search, and these are all the returns that have been entered so far. And by the way, there is Mr. Johnson. That's the return. That's the first return. And as you can see, even now, some returns are in the process of being prepared. And I'll show you about navigating this screen that can help you find returns, okay? Because as you can imagine, during this tax season, this list of values is going to be tremendous. As a matter of fact, it goes pages and pages, depending on how many returns we do, okay? So let's go to Johnson, hit select. And this is Mr. Johnson's return, okay? Let's go to, let's go to entering the return itself, federal section. And again, I'm doing this quickly. We'll go through it slowly, step by step, when we do the second return. And we did do this a little bit last week, if you guys remember, okay? So let's look at his interest and dividend income that was entered. Okay, we see the amount, $560. We see the early withdrawal penalty. So it was entered correctly in our program. We see the federal withholding of $6. So in other words, when a manager reviews this return, and even you guys should do this as well, before you submit it to somebody like me to review it, make sure that everything in the source document has been properly entered onto the various boxes within TaxSlayer. Okay, so it looks like that error that we caught on the checklist has been rectified on the return itself in TaxSlayer. Okay, let's talk about that $52 we saw as a deduction for tax purposes. Now, say you're a new preparer, and you guys are new preparers, and you're not really sure where to put this information. Well, there's a couple of ways of doing it. You can put it in based on the type of section it belongs to. And again, we will go over this in depth a little bit later. But I'm going to show you a shortcut here. Well, I'm sorry. No, let's do it this way for now. Let's try to look for deductions, the other taxes, the deductions here. Okay, the standard deduction. Whoops. I'm sorry. Itemized deductions. See where it says here, itemized deductions, charitable contributions, etc. That's where it goes. And from there, let's go to gifts to charity. And non-cash donations, let's do here. Okay. Charitable name. Gee, I'm having trouble finding it. Well, I think there's another way to find this. Let's go back to can look at the return itself, right? Okay. See line 12B, charitable contributions. So in other words, there's several ways. The point of all this is there's several ways of entering the information, trying to find it in this little chart here, okay? Entering what's called a form number, which we'll go over later, or going to the form itself and saying, hey, do I see that $32 there? Excuse me, that $52. It should have been here. I don't see it, right? What do? We can click this little number and we can go here, right? And guess what? We were at the same screen. Anyway, we were already there. But I just wanted to show you that there's more than one way to enter the information to find where you're supposed to put it. Okay? So let's put the charity name. It's church. Let's do it in caps. And description, it says cash donations. Okay? And let's just assume, for purposes of this example, the letter that he received from his church is dated the last day of 2021, okay? And we know how much was it? Well, per the checklist and per the receipt that we saw was $52, okay? We enter that. And as you can see, our good friend Tax Slayer is recalculating things, right? And there's the $52. And maybe you guys remember if you saw it before, this number here, line 15, was $52 greater, which means the amount here, the tax was higher. And let's see, the tax itself before this little change was $71. So before the change, before this change that we put in for the cash contributions, it was $71. It is now $66. We've reduce the amount of tax that this person has to pay, or we've increased his refund by another $5. Now you might say, well, $5 is not much. But remember what we said last week about what we do here at Community Tax Aid? We prepare a complete and accurate return. That is important to remember, a complete and accurate return, okay? In my mind now, based on a review of this checklist, review the documents, the entering of the information on Tax Slayer, we now have a complete and accurate return on our taxpayer, Mr. Johnson. Okay, so that's what I wanted to point out as part of our little homework assignment that you guys had for last week. Hopefully it makes sense to you. What's up, link has expired. Okay. Taxpayer doesn't show. Okay. Somebody asked, can a small error lead to this being audited by the IRS? A small error, no. It depends what the IRS is looking at. There are like a lot of what's called hot topics that the IRS looks at when it looks at candidates for audits. We do know recently that self-employed individuals are kind of like a hot candidate for audits. They look at self-employed individuals' returns. To answer that person's question. Okay, you guys should be looking at the form itself per Tax Slayer, okay? You should not be looking at the checklist. I'm sharing with you the form itself. If you guys want to open the checklist that you guys have access to, you can do that. But again, that's what I wanted to show you here. And hopefully you've done your homework and hopefully this makes sense to you, okay? So let's do this. Let's save and exit. And save and exit. Okay. Okay, so that is our first Tax Slayer problem. Has to do with Mr. Johnson. And whatever questions are in the chat, hopefully our volunteers who are looking at the chat can take care of it. Okay, now let us look at our second tax problem. And that problem has not been entered into this program. And what we're going to try to do today to give you an introduction to this program is we're going to enter this. Well, I am going to enter this. You guys are going to watch me enter it, and hopefully you'll be taking notes. So before we go back into Tax Slayer, let's take a look at some of the information we have on this taxpayer, okay? Let's try to share the screen again and keep your fingers crossed. Okay, here's some data about the second problem. We have Ralph and Alice. Ralph is a bus driver and Alice is a housewife. And if you guys are guessing, and I think the answer is yes, I was watching the Honeymooners when it was coming up with this little problem of ours. But anyway, it's Ralph and Alice, and they have a new daughter named Emily, who was born in 2021. And they live in Brooklyn, and that's some other information about Ralph and Alice. And hopefully you guys can see this. And let's try to get out of this. Okay. And let's go back and see what else we have on Ralph and Alice. Let's see. Okay. Can you guys see the W-2? Please enter in the chat whether or not you can see this. Oh, no. All right. I'm sorry.
No, it's not showing up.
Okay, let's try it again. I keep going to stop and start, and I'm sorry. I have to go back and forth. Okay, can you guys see now Ralph's W-2? Show me in the chat.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I'm sorry. I got to like stop the share and start the share. Anyway, this is his W-2. It's from the city of New York, as you can see. A couple of interesting points about this. I do want to say that on box 16 and 18, that is a typo, guys, okay? So make a note of this typo. Box 16 and box 18 should be $35,000. Why do I say that? For city municipal workers or for people who are on a deferred compensation plan, in other words, part of their income is subject to this pension plan contribution, which means that although they were paid this, they're really taxed on that lower amount. Why? The difference is their pension plan contribution. So again, as you can see, Ralph's wages for federal tax purposes is $2,000 less. Why? Because of this pension plan contribution. That should be the same amount here and here. But again, based on your training last week, what do we know about city workers and this, which is what's called the 414H contribution? That has to be added back to these numbers when we calculate their state return, state and city return. So again, this should be 35, but once we get to the state return, it will be back to 37. So once again, this is a typo here and here. Okay, let's see, what else do we have about Ralph and Alice? I'm going to stop sharing and go back to share, and let's try.
You were showing the interest statement before.
Yep, here it is. So they also have interest from a bank account too, and that's the interest income that they have. Okay, so apparently, Mr. and Mrs. Landon's return is a little bit more straightforward. They have wages, and they have some interest income, and they also have a big change in their family. You know, they have a birth of a child too, which comes into play when we enter the information into our program. Okay, what else do I want to show you? Let's get out of this and go here and go here, and then, whoops. Oh, sorry, let's do this and this and this. I'm finally getting the hang of this, guys. 2 weeks later, I'm finally getting the hang of this. Okay, so this is the checklist that has already been prepared for us. Once again, another typo. We're not preparing a 2020 return for Ralph and Alice. This is a 2021 return. Okay, we'll put it in all the information that we know based on that fact sheet you saw, based on the 2 documents that you saw, but also just as important, more important maybe in fact, is the interview that you're going to have with Ralph and Alice. And since this is done virtually, most likely you're going to conduct a Zoom meeting, well, in this case, a Google meeting with Ralph and Alice, okay? Information you're getting about the person. Emily, the daughter, was born in 2021. And notice that's been checked off too. And we know we get that information from page 3. Filing status, pretty straightforward in this case. Let me try to make this bigger for you guys to see. Married jointly. They've lived together all year. They've been married for a while. We answered these questions as well about foreign currency and foreign bank accounts. How did they find out about us? Again, we need to know that in terms of how we're reaching out to the taxpayer, in this case, through our website. Okay. Other information about Ralph and Alice, their email addresses, phone numbers, that's important to enter into TaxSlayer, no matter what return. So people might not have an email address, but make sure you try to get a phone number for them, okay? Are they being claimed as a dependent by someone else? Are they identity theft victims? Our income limits are met. And if you remember what I said last week, there are some cases where we will prepare returns that are above these income limits. And we do that. And if that is the case, have a manager approve this, have a manager initial here saying, we're gonna prepare this return, even though they're a little bit above our income limits. Other information about Ralph and Alice we need, driver's license information or ID card information. This is especially helpful on a state return. This provides a level of identity theft protection, especially on a state return. And again, we talked about getting this from their driver's license or ID card. The front and back most likely will have this information. Again, when it comes to the ID code, it's like a 10 or 12 code. It could be letters and numbers, or numbers and letters, or a combination of the both. So this is the first 3 numbers or digits on Ralph's ID card. This is the first 3 numbers or letters on Alice's ID card. The taxpayers choose to have their returns e-file. There's some places where it can be done paper return. But again, the advantage of e-filing, again, faster processing. There are some cases where we have to paper file a return, and that is true of an identity theft victim who we don't have a PIN letter on. We cannot prepare a federal return e-filing. We can prepare that person's state return e-filing. This is information about their bank account, so their refund is directly deposited into their bank. Let me try to make this bigger for you guys so you can see it here. Information on Ralph's W-2, you can see here. Again, if there was more than one W-2, you enter it there. Transfer the information from here to there, right? Interest from the bank accounts. Again, pretty straightforward in terms of this return. We're just adding this and this and this, okay? The 414H contribution, we're seeing it here, the $2,000, okay? Again, if we prepared the return and we had the refunds on the state and city, write it there, compare it to the return, ask them whether or not they got it. Very important for us. Page 3, we're talking about Emily now, who we know, I have dreams about this. Emily is a qualifying child of the taxpayers. We put the name of this person, we put the various attributes that are made. Unfortunately, when I did this, this should have been ticked off. It didn't come through. I apologize for that. The joint return test and the relationship test should be ticked off as well. All of these boxes have to be ticked off in order for Emily to be a qualifying child of the parents. Okay, so once all of these tests are met, we go back to page 1 and we tick it off right there that Emily is a qualifying child of the taxpayers, in this case, her parents. No, the big information has to be listed here. You go to page 1 of the quick reference for married filing jointly taxpayers who are filing together. That is their standard deduction amount. What is their possible itemized deductions? Well, again, as you can see, when it comes to taxes, the amount of city and state withholding taxes is possibly a Schedule A item. That's why you see that $3,800 there, which is the sum of their withholdings from Ralph's W-2. It's the $3,600 and the $1,250 and the $1,550, which is $3,800. So that's where I'm getting this number you see on page 3. That's that. But as you can see, this total doesn't exceed that one. Use the standard. No cash contributions in this case for our non-itemized. We don't have to worry about that. Page 4 talks about the earned income credit. And again, worksheet B has to be filled out for everybody. Not going to go through it. As you can see, they qualify. They have a qualifying child. So worksheet C has to be filled out as well. B and C in this case. Answer the questions here. As you can see, the questions have been answered. You can ignore worksheet D. That's only for taxpayers with no qualifying children. Okay. We couldn't find Ralph's 2019 return. He could have qualified for a higher earned income credit, maybe, but we don't have the 2019 return. I don't think we should push it that much. In other words, if the person doesn't have it or doesn't think his income is as high, I wouldn't push it in terms of we need to see it come back next week. I think we could just use the amounts from the 2021 return in order to calculate the earned income credit. And I give you a hint, they are going to get the earned income credit. Okay. Remember what I said last week about, again, a time-saving device? We know that Ralph's income, W-2, is greater than $18,000. And assuming he is a renter, and he is because he told us that he pays $600 in rent, but we know this. We don't even ask to ask him. We know by seeing his W-2 that question 8, the answer to that question is yes. And take a look at this statement again. His income is more than $18,000, the household gross income. He's not going to be eligible for this. In my mind, as a time-saving device, why even bother going through this? But again, this is a personal decision as a manager. You might work with other managers who want you to complete this part of the worksheet. Follow their lead, okay, when it comes to that. Other questions, again, for New York and New York City, pretty straightforward here. Alice takes care of the baby while Ralph works. They are not paying anybody for childcare expenses. Education credits, no one in the household is going to a secondary institution, and that includes the child, of course. Stimulus payments. Ralph and Alice receive two $1,200 payments, or $2,400, and they received a letter, okay? But what do we know about stimulus payments, right? Well, we know that it's based on the 2021 numbers. And guess what? There's been a change in the family. This might change the stimulus payment as a result of another person in the family. And guess what? The child tax credit. They didn't get advance payments of the child tax credit, right? Because at the time when they filed their prior year return, there was no baby in the family, right? So the government didn't give them advanced child tax credit. So their responses here make sense to me. But I think as a preparer, I think we should follow up with this. And this is true, that taxpayers can go to a portal on the IRS website at the time. You know, we're talking about last year and the last 6 months of the year. They can go to the portal and indicate to the federal government, I have a new qualifying child in my household. I think my advance payment should increase. They're going to ask you to prove that. Or I want you to stop giving me advanced child tax credit payments. I'm going to get it when I file my return. Or I think I'm going to have one less qualifying child for my 2021 year. Give me less. That in theory, that was possible. That could have happened if taxpayers have access to this portal to let the government know about these changes. So even though Emily was born in 2021, and they said they didn't receive any advanced child tax credits, I think it's prudent on us just to ask the question, did you reach out to the IRS? Did you let them know about this change? Did you ask them for amounts, okay? Because especially in this case, they didn't have the letter. In some cases, maybe the government never sent them a letter. Of course, in this case, because they didn't get it, that's why they didn't get a letter. But again, in terms of our due diligence, that comes to mind. Just in case, ask them about their daughter, okay? That's all. That's what I'm trying to say. The taxpayers did not get their health insurance from the marketplace, the exchange. Remember about that and the premium tax credit from last week. I didn't tick it off here, but of course, tick off these boxes, signed off that you prepared it. In some cases, the person who's going to computer input it into TaxSlayer and the person who's prepared this checklist will not be the same person. I encourage you to be, if you are tech savvy or you're very comfortable interviewing people and filling out this checklist of ours, to do both sides of this. Use the checklist and prepare the return. You'll learn even more about CTA and you'll be helping yourself in the long run if you can do both parts. But we did see this last year, and it's okay. where this task is split up between somebody interviewing and preparing this checklist and somebody computer inputting. It's okay. It's up to you guys. I'll leave it at that. Okay, so we have the checklist, and it looks like it's pretty accurate compared to the other checklists. We saw the documents that make up this checklist. We saw the little fact sheet of ours that you knew about the taxpayer. Let us go back to TaxSlayer and enter this. This has not been entered in the program, so let's do that right now, guys. So I'm going to share once again, and here we are. Yay, I'm learning. Thank you. Okay, it's never too late to learn. All right, so you will be given soon, guys, access to this program. It's based on your CTA email account and a password that will be set, okay? Once you do that, you will get to this screen, okay? And I know we did this last week, but let's review it again this week. You're gonna see that you're in the 2021 program, but you can also do other year returns. Take a look at this. You can go as far back as 2016. 2018 and forward is important for somebody who has not filed a return and is gonna get a refund. Even as early as 2018, if you prepare their return and they get in a refund, as long as that return is given to the government by April 15th, or in this year it's going to be what, April 18th, there is a chance that they will still get that refund. That's important, especially for this year's return, the 2018 return. Okay, so you're in this front screen, and before we enter the return, let's take a look at what we're seeing here, okay? Well, what do we see here? We see Message Center. Now, we are going to communicate with you, with everybody, through what has been set up in Google, using Google Meets, using the various rooms that Tom is going to talk about later. TaxSlayer has a message center where you can send messages back and forth to ourselves. Do not use this. We're not going to use this at all, okay? Rejected clients. What does that mean? It means that once you've prepared the return, and once a manager has reviewed it, and once it's e-filed to TaxSlayer, if there is a problem with that return, then we will see in the rejected clients folder a number here, greater than 0, okay? Which means that of a return that was filed, there's been an error with it. What? Maybe a transposition in Social Security numbers. And everybody's number in the government's eyes, Social Security numbers, things like that. So they can trace numbers like that, EIN numbers of businesses, other things like that. Or maybe somebody who doesn't qualify the taxpayer for the earned income credit. Why? Because maybe that taxpayer is being used as a dependent by somebody else, qualifying child by somebody else. That's why a return might be rejected. That's why you might see a number greater than 0. Now, when it comes to rejected clients, it's really the responsibility of a manager to look into this matter, because once the return is given to him or her, and that return is e-filed, that manager has to monitor this rejected client's little bar here. And he or she will go into the return itself and see which return has been rejected and why. And that person will look into it. That person might reach out to you and say, we did Mr. Johnson's return. There seems to be an error with e-filing, okay? Now, what do you guys should get out of this? Well, I think that you guys have the power by ticking off this box. You can see which return was rejected. And if you want, you can be a little bit proactive. You can reach out to the manager who's responsible for looking at this return and say, Emil, remember that Johnson return we reviewed? Well, I was just in TaxSlayer, and according to this TaxSlayer says it's rejected. Have you looked into this? I'm just giving you a heads up. So I think you guys, in terms of looking at this, I think that's how you should look at it, okay? Dismiss notifications. Occasionally in this box here, the TaxSlayer people will send out notices that is given to everybody who has TaxSlayer. For example, the IRS sent out a new change regarding unemployment compensation. And did this happen last year during the tax season? They might have a notice here, okay? And then after a while, it's sent, and it's not discarded, it's just dismissed. It goes here, and you'll see a list of all of these, what's called dismissed notices, okay? All right, so we're going to go in a second to these little points here, and then we're going to go out of this and back here, okay? So let's go here first, client search, okay? Now, as you can see here, these are all the returns that are in the midst of being prepared, has been prepared, has been completed. You never know, okay? As you can see, it's sorted by the social security number, the first name, the last name, person's phone number, remember, asking for phone number, the preparer, in this case, right? The status, so we know that this return is still in progress. The return that we talked about, Johnson, is in review, which means that the manager is now reviewing this. Some have been accepted. So this individual here, who's one of our veterans and is very good, and as you can see, has started some of his returns already. He's prepared to return. It's already been accepted by TaxSlayer. It more or less has been e-filed, okay? So in review, accepted, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I mentioned this before, you can bet that this screen about is going to be populated as we go through the tax season. Last year, we did over 600 returns, so you can imagine how many names we're going to come across. I think TaxSlayer can fit the first 50 on this sheet, so you're going to see more than one sheet. So how about if you were to try to find a return you prepared, instead of scrolling up and down like what we're doing here, here's a way of, again, sorting it quickly. You can sort by the last name. Of course, now it's in alphabetical order, A to Z, or backwards, Z to A. You can sort it by the social security number if you happen to know the last 4 digits of social security number. You can even sort it by the preparer, U, right? So again, this is alphabetical order, and it looks like it's alphabetical order based on the first letter of your first name, okay? That's what it looks like. So you can sort this file this way. Okay?
Hi, Emil.
Yes.
I just want to let all the volunteers know your list of names is not going to be as expansive as Emil's. He's a manager, so he can see everyone, but most of you will only be able to see the client returns that you have prepared, that you had a hand in.
Well, Keisha, I'm in the program, and it's giving me permissions that our volunteer is going to see. What I have, this version of the program, is my understanding is this is what the volunteer is going to have.
Emil, it's not. It is not. There's one checkbox that wasn't checked in your, your account settings.
Okay, gotcha, Tom. Okay, so based on what I just heard from our 2 other board members, yeah, I'm not really sure if you have this capability. I thought you did. Okay. Okay. Anyway, you will have capabilities of doing this, starting in a new return. We're not going to get into that later. We're going to get into that later. I want to show you the side here, all of these little things here. Main menu, of course, you hit that, and guess what? You get this. This is the main menu, all right? Client status. And again, I'm showing you based on certain permissions, which you might not have. I'm going to show you anyway, okay? Client status. It shows you the same returns. And if you look on the side here, it talks about it's been in progress, it's been deactivated, et cetera, et cetera. Again, my understanding based on this is what you can see. I'm not really sure at this point. Okay, IRS website. If you need to look up anything for the IRS website, guess what? You get the link to the IRS website right over there. Opt out of e-filing or forms. Again, filling out this, I'll give you the rule, which states that if you are a paid preparer and you're filing returns electronically, you have to file all your returns electronically. And there's an exception. This form has to be filed to provide an explanation why you're not e-filing a return, okay? It is there on the side there. And again, because we're a not-for-profit organization, we're not required to file that. So in other words, we can file a paper return even though we're using this software to prepare a return. And because we're a not-for-profit organization, we're not really, it's not, my understanding is we're not really obligated to fill out that form, okay? Mailing addresses, again, it gives you to a link to the IRS website. where you can find out what is the address to file a return based on the state where you are preparing the return. So we're in New York, guys, of course. Google. Link to Google. Maybe you want to look up a tax topic, or maybe you even want to look up instructions to various states' tax forms. You might be doing other than New York and New Jersey. You can do that, and you need to know the rules for those other states. Let's see, TaxSlayer Pro. That's really for customers of TaxSlayer. I don't think it's worth it for you to see that. Beyond Trust Remote Support. I don't think that's worth you guys seeing. Well, I'll show you. But again, if you had a problem with TaxSlayer, TaxSlayer can look at your program. They can, interact with you. I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah, I'm saying let's go to TaxSlayer Pro. Why not? So again, this is really geared towards customers of TaxSlayer. So in other words, would you like to enroll in these products and things like that? I don't think we're going to come across that. Knowledge base, I think you guys will come across this, okay? I've used this in preparation for this class. For example, we didn't know how to enter, say, that charitable contribution information, that $52 we saw in the other problem. So right here in the question bar, I would write charitable contributions, right?
Emil, just want to let you know, every pop-up window that you have on your screen is not shown on the share screen.
So you don't see this TaxSlayer support pop-up screen?
No, anytime, because you're sharing only that window, you're not sharing the full screen.
I understand. Okay, so I won't do that. But anyway, in the knowledge base, when you click knowledge base, there's a bar in the center there. It says type in your question. So if you had doubt in terms of entering, for example, the charitable contributions, you can write in that bar there, how to enter charitable contributions, and it will give you a couple of articles and show you certain steps that you have to go to within the program. So in other words, if you're in doubt in terms of entering things within the TaxSlayer program, you can use this knowledge base to do that, okay? Refund calculator, again, based on what I heard, it's pointless to click into this. But I did use it the other day in preparation of this class, and it's, to be honest with you, it's not very reliable. What is a refund calculator? If you click it, it will give you quickly what the refund may be based on the information you know about the taxpayer. And once you click it, you enter the filing status of the person, you enter some information about the person, his wages, his age, filing status, his age. And based on that information, you just hit one button and the program will calculate what this person's refund could be. Now, again, I did this, but it's not reliable. Why do I say that? Because I did it for somebody who's who's more than 65, who's a single person, no qualifying children, and has wages below the earned income credit limits. So I just wanted to see if we would calculate the earned income credit for that person under those circumstances, and it didn't. So I said, well, let me try it for a married person, calculating the earned income credit, and it did. So I'm not really sure if this has a lot of value, refund calculator, but it's, anyway. I just wanted to show you what this program is capable of doing, some of the screens which can help you, some which cannot. Anyway, it is what it is. This is the program. This is what we're using. Now you can see this, starting a new tax return. So we are going to click this and we're going to enter the information. So let's say start a new return. Tom, can we see this about the Social Security numbers?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the starting point, ladies and gentlemen, for entering the information about our second taxpayer, which is the land-ins, okay? And I have the information in front of me, so that it's asking about Social Security number, one person. And usually it's the taxpayer, the husband first. Okay, confirm that number. Now, I purposely put in the wrong number. Why? Because you're going to get that. The Social Security numbers don't match, okay? it could have been entered incorrectly here or here. It's been entered incorrectly there. Just wanted to show you what the program can do. Okay. Okay. 6276 says get the consent of the return for the taxpayer. That can be ignored. We're going to do the return. Okay. Okay, now we're on this part of the screen from TaxSlayer. And again, let's now look at this. So the screen on the left that we saw before was slightly different than what you see here. We are now in the return itself. And these screens pertain to the return you're preparing, okay? Basic information. This is the basic information screen right here. It talks about filing status, personal information, dependents, whether or not the person has identity theft PIN, okay? There's other sections here. Federal section, which we enter income, basically. A question about health insurance coverage. The state section where we put in information pertaining to New York. The summary at this point where we can summarize and look at the return. Again, based on your permissions, I'm not really sure if you have that capability or even to e-file, okay? After we prepare a return, we can amend it, it looks like, right here. Help and support, reaching out to TaxSlayer with your questions, saving and exiting the return, which we can also do here. Okay. Now, what if, again, you're a new person entering this information in the return, and you're not really sure where things go. You're not really sure about these screens here, but you do have, say, a 1099 interest form, right? You might say to yourself, well, where do I put this 1099 interest form? Well, guess what? Go here and say, enter form number. We're going to put in 1099 interest, INT. And look what it says. Go to that form. And guess what? It doesn't happen. Why isn't it happening?
Emil, you have to put in the filing status and the people's name first.
Okay. All right. So yeah. All right. Let's do that first. Let's go to married filing jointly based on the checklist. That's what it is. Hit continue. Let's see if I can try that. Well, I think we have to do this first. In other words, we have to do the basic information before we do this. Anyway, let's keep going. We're going to enter Ralph and Landon. Gotta learn how to spell. Okay, that is his date of birth. Excuse me, his date of birth is what? 3/1/1989. His fictional birthday's coming up soon. Okay, his occupation, bus driver. Okay. Okay, so questions about Ralph. Can he be claimed as dependent on someone else's return? Is he over age 18, et cetera, et cetera? A lot of these questions are on our checklist. So verify this information from our checklist. Remember this question here? Take a look at the checklist. He wants $3 to go to the presidential campaign fund, okay? None of these things are happening. We don't have, unfortunately, the 2019 return, okay? Wasn't affected by a disaster. Virtual currency, remember that question? He's gonna get his answers to questions in English from the IRS. And that's important, I guess, for, say, our Spanish-speaking taxpayers. We can have them, if they get any letters from the IRS, we can direct that the IRS send them those letters in their language, which is other than English. That's pretty cool, right? Communication accessible format, blah, blah, blah. Age 18 and the EIC, okay. I'll put that in. That's gonna come in later. The spouse's information is married filing jointly. It's Alice and it's Landon. And what's her social? Again, we're getting it from the information sheet we have, 102-30-4316. What's her date of birth? Okay, February, March 22nd, 1990. Whoops, try it again. There we go, occupation, housewife. Okay. Again, all of these questions that were asked of Ralph, they're asking of Alice. She also wants $3 put into the presidential campaign fund. Take a look at the checklist. Okay. What is their address? In this case, it's 579 CHUNCEI Chauncey Street. That's apartment number 2. And again, take a look at this, of course, 11230. Guess what? It automatically knows that that zip code is of Brooklyn here in New York City. Remember we talked about the phone number? Let's see, what's the phone number here is 646-555-3301. Okay, hit continue. Still, we're in the basic, oh, we're not. We're in the New York section. But guess what? Did we enter anything about Emily? No. As long as we're in the basic section, I'm surprised we came here. Let's go here. God. Little quirk on the return. We can't get here because we're in the New York screen. See? We have to enter some information about New York before we go here. That's really frustrating. Okay. We're in the New York screen for some reason. And it's asking us, is he a New York City, a New York, or Yonkers resident? The answer is yes. Full year resident in Yonkers? No. Full year resident in New York City? Yes. The spouse, full year resident in New York City? Yes. How many months did they live in New York City? 12 and 12. Okay, look what it's saying here. If these numbers were less than 12, complete the rest of this checklist. If not, let's get out of it. Let's try to go now to dependents and qualifying information. It's giving us that. Oh, I'm sorry, this. Do we have a permanent home address different than the address on the return? No. It's asking us for the school code. I'm surprised it went here instead of here. Anyway, the person lives in Brooklyn, which is Kings County. I think later on, we'll try to give you a list of the counties and the 3-digit code. You guys should have this. We don't know what the 3-digit code is, but if we look it up this way, I think it'll automatically populate it for us. Again, Kings County is, let's try Brooklyn. Donuts.
Brooklyn, go down.
There we go. And it's, okay. Now it's asking for dependents and qualifying persons. It's kind of strange. We were in the basic screen, and yet it went to New York automatically. That's really strange. Quirk in the program, I guess. Anyway, dependents and qualifying persons. We do, right? The daughter, Emily. Let's put in Emily. The answer is yes. Okay. Emily. Emily landed. And according to the checklist, she was born on October 30th, 2021. She does have a social security number, 11701 2021. Is she a U.S. citizen? Yes. Relationship to the parents, daughter. Again, you see what I'm doing? There's drop downs there, and you can just select what relation they are. A lot of these things, you see the drop downs, of course. Lives in the, how many months did it live with the taxpayer? Even though somebody was born during the year, they consider that person to live with the taxpayer all year. So that should be 12. See, even says it here. If this person, dependent, was born in 2021, select 12. It just proved out what I just said. Okay. These other questions here, Emily just born, not even in school yet. None of these things are happening. Okay. All right. Continue. Okay. If you made an error in entering Emily's name or social security number, when you review this, you can go here. See the little pencil? And you can edit what you've just entered. Or I made a mistake altogether. You can delete what you've done, okay? And if you need to put in another qualifying child, guess what? You can do that, okay? Okay, it's all on the dependents menu. One of the things I want to emphasize, and you saw this last week when I gave you a quick review of this program, if you have information in any of these boxes, it changes from blue to black, as you can see, okay? The basic information, we've entered that, we've entered that. I identity theft protection issues. Let's see if we don't enter that because we don't have that. Let's see if we can just get out of this and continue. Great, we can. So tax layer now goes to the second part of this screen here, left-hand side. We go from basic information to federal section, right? We know about the W-2 they have. We know about the 1099 interest they have. But again, what if you were new to this program and you weren't sure about putting the information on a bank account here? I believe you can do it this way by putting in the form number, right? We have a 1099 interest. Hit this, and guess what? You're there. In other words, you could have gone and entered the information here, but if you weren't sure of that, you can enter it here, okay? Again, it's another way of entering the information or finding out where to put the information. Okay, you're there as well. Since we're already here at the interest income side, let's put in the information on interest income, okay? So it is from a 1099 interest form, right? It's asking for information on the bank. And what do we have here? Okay, the name of the bank is Chase Bank. The EIN is the business number of the bank. In this case, it is this 695487132. The address of the bank, it's saying here 1 and Plaza. Okay. And the zip code here, again, 10036. And of course, automatically New York City comes up. Important. Is this the taxpayers, the spouses, or joint account? If you look at the form, this belongs to Alice, right? Go to the drop down. This is Alice's. This 1099 is in her name, okay? As you can see, the interest income, all these other things refer to box numbers which are on the form itself. So the only number that I see here is the interest income. And again, rounded up to the nearest dollar. And in this case, it's 148. Oops, 148, right? Nothing else should be added here. Hit continue. If there was more than one bank account, as you can see, save and enter another. Hit continue. And as you can see, it sums up what you've entered so far. And remember what we saw here holds true, okay? Now, before we go to the other screens, I want to show you what's going on the right-hand side. And as you can see, the return is automatically calculating what you're doing step by step. You're entering in information based on some of the income numbers you've had. Tax layer, as you can see, is calculating what's going on step by step. Right now, it's given a federal AGI of 148, which is all we've had so far, right? Federal shows the bottom line. In other words, what is the federal refund or what does the person have to pay at this point? Nothing. State, New York. All of a sudden, there's a $125 refund. Why is that? Anybody remember their NYC 210, right? So the NYC 210, the New York City school tax credit, is $125 for married, filing jointly people. So guess what? It's automatically calculating that, but that number might change as we enter in other information as we go along, okay? So let us go back to the income side. And again, the W-2, again, it says most common form. And again, if you didn't know to get to this screen, you can enter that information here. Type in W-2, and eventually you'll get here. So let's use this, all right? Begin. Standard W-2, whose return is it? And guess what? Ralph's name is not spelled correctly. I'm going to change that. Personal information. Let's see. I'm managing my own, I'm reviewing my own work. Very bad, very bad. Got to learn how to type and got to learn how to spell. Okay, so hopefully that's right. Now let's go back to the federal section and the income. And it is right. This is Ralph's W-2, right? His information, his address automatically comes up. But now they're asking about the employer, okay? What is the EIN of this company? Well, this is what we have, 19. Now, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, this EIN number is of the city of New York. And I'm using their correct number because you're going to see a lot of city workers. You're going to see a lot of people who work for the city. And I didn't want to give a phony number because if you remember last week, and it just popped up, if we've used this EIN number before, it's already stored. And as you can see, half of the information is already populated, okay? This is the correct EIN number of the City of New York. This is the correct address of this City of New York who issues these W-2s for most city workers. So this information that you see here is the real McCoy. And I didn't want to mess with something like that, even on a return like this, you know, just a sample return. I want to make sure we put it in the right numbers because this is stored now in our computer, okay? Again, we're entering the information. It's really a copy job from the form itself. Once upon a time, we said, don't do that. In other words, get the information directly from the checklist. But it seems to me that it's almost as easy to enter the information from the form itself. Just make sure, ladies and gentlemen, that the information you're entering from the form agrees to what's entered on the checklist, because the checklist is proof that we have prepared this return completely and accurately. So pay box 1 is what, 35,000. Okay. Federal withholding is 3,600. Remember what we said last week? You remember about wages? Based on this amount, TaxSlayer automatically calculates the Social Security withheld, the Medicare withheld. Notice this highlighted pink amount. That's an automatic calculation by TaxSlayer. But guess what? This is not right. Why? Because boxes 3 and 5 are not 35,000, they are 37,000. Okay. And we know why that's the case, because although Ralph was indeed paid 37,000, only 35,000 is being taxed. Okay, welcome back, guys. Sorry about that little technical glitch. I am at the Fountain House location, which is our face-to-face location this year. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm using one of their computers, but unfortunately, they're going through some upgrades here. And it looks like it affected the computer I'm using right now. Anyway, we're back. Hope you enjoyed your little break. We're back at that same screen. I was entering information on Ralph's W-2. And again, we talked about the City of New York having this information, very important. You'll probably see a lot of New York City workers when you prepare returns here at Community Tax Aid. We got to this point here where Social Security is automatically calculated based on the wages here. It moves over here, and it's automatically calculated. And again, now this number should be 37,000 because although Ralph earned 35,000, he's going to receive Social Security benefits on his total amount of 37,000. So those amounts that are calculated automatically by TaxSlayer should agree to what's on the W-2, and they do. In some cases, they don't. It might be off by $1 or so. So just make sure you review that as well, okay? Well, do we have anything in box 12 of Ralph's W-2? We do, okay? And go to the code, there's a drop down, and there's a letter DD. You might be saying to yourself, what does that letter DD mean? Well, it means in this case, this is the employer's provided health insurance coverage for Ralph, and assuming his family. Again, for purposes of example, it's only $1,200. Now, in terms of the codes and what they mean, go to, again, in the federal folder, the instructions to the W-2 form, you will see a listing of all those codes and what they mean. It is very important to enter the information that you see on box 12. Why? Because there could be information about pension plan contributions other than this 414H contribution. The person could have made a contribution to his 401k, to an IRA he might have that might be listed on this W-2. And we do know that that information flows, what's going on? Everybody can see this, I guess? What's going on? Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. Anyway, very important to enter all the information you see on box 12. It could qualify the taxpayer for other credits. For example, the retirement savings credit, okay? And again, the boxes on box 13, Ralph's part of a retirement plan. So make sure you tick off this box here. Okay, you'll see that in box 13, the second box is ticked off. Ralph's a member of the retirement plan. Yeah, his city retirement plan. There is something on box 14. And again, there's another drop down. And as you can see it here for New York residents, there it is, the 414H contribution. And that is $2,000. That's important because hopefully if you enter this information correctly, it automatically flows through to the New York return as a New York addition for New York tax purposes. Remember what we talked about last week in the New York lecture, okay? Nothing else here is important to this return. State information, again, towards the bottom of this W-2. Okay, withholdings from New York. The state ID number is that number there, which is, okay, the wages, again, 35,000, as you can see. It is taking the right amount net of the 414H contribution. That is correct. See, it automatically came through apparently. But again, it was listed incorrectly in the W-2. The withholdings from box 17, 2,250. The local wages, again, should be 35,000 as well. The local tax paid in this case, 1,550. The locality name, it tells you here. If entering New York City as locality, you must enter NYC on box 20. If entering Yonkers as a locality, you must enter Yonkers. So don't put in YON or type in New York City. Type in what they say. So it's supposed to be there, right? Okay. And again, they're giving you a heads up. If you're entering an amount in box 14, and if the amount is from a 414H contribution, there's a drop down, okay? Or 125 cafeteria plan, IRC section 125, that's cafeteria plan. Make sure you use the number from the drop down menu. It is telling you this. Why? Because that number is going to go to a different screen. Make sure you enter it properly here, okay? And
Hi, Emil.
yes.
Kenneth wanted to let you know that you put in the state EIN twice.
Okay, you're right. 13.
Thank you, Kenneth.
About that. Okay. Thank you, Kenneth. Okay. So again, this information on the bottom here is very important when it comes to new returns. Make sure you read that as well. And especially this, it says, New York could reject your return if you try to send the state return electronically. Okay. Want to make sure we're calculating the state amounts correctly. Okay. Continue. Again, we can enter another W-2. We can edit what we've just done, or we can delete what we just done. And guess what? We have new information which changes this, what we're seeing on the right. The AGI now is 35,148. The wages is 35,000. The interest income of 148. It is calculating a refund so far of that amount on the federal and that amount on the state. Okay. Green numbers here represent refunds. Black numbers, I believe it is, will represent amount dues, or might be the number with a negative sign next to it. So that's how you interpret what the bottom line is. But so far, very decent numbers. And these numbers can change based on our understanding of some credits. Okay, so we've entered the income information. And again, if there were other sources of income, we'd enter it here. For self-employed people, Schedule C. For people like Uber drivers, might receive information on a 1099K for credit card transactions, NEC, non-employee compensation, unemployment, et cetera, et cetera. Other sources of income come here. Social Security benefits right there. We're not going to go into this particular screens right now, but again, the major income items can be entered here. Okay. Let's get out of this. Deductions. Again, we know that the person is going to take the standard deduction amount. There are no other deductions that come to mind. The person didn't make cash contributions. And we know if we made cash contributions and he's not itemizing, it would go in the standard deduction amount, charitable contributions amount. It's not happening here, okay? But you could enter it here, all right? Let's look at other taxes. The self-employed tax, that could have been, that's an automatic calculation. You want to make sure it's calculated correctly. If the person is a barber or waiter and didn't report all of his tips to employer, and had unreported tip income, he was responsible for paying Social Security tax on that. That would go here. If he made an IRA withdrawal and doesn't have an exception for early withdrawal penalties, you might see a number here and Form 5329. What other things are important here to see? I think that's it. Okay. Payment screen for self-employed people or people who had a big tax bill last year. They could have made estimated tax payments on the federal side and on the state side. Other withholdings that say came from a 1099. When you go to the 1099 forms in the particular income screens, there are boxes where you put federal withholdings. See, look what it says here. Federal withholdings you haven't entered already. So it could be from another form that unfortunately you didn't come across in your travels. Enter it here, okay? If the person wants to pay estimated taxes next year, you can even generate vouchers for next year. You know, if the person has that complex of return where he's self-employed and he's responsible for making all of his tax payments, he might want vouchers for next year so he can pay it, okay? Miscellaneous forms. What's important here? Power of attorney. Not really sure about that. If looks like a PIN needed, for identity theft purposes, you want a PIN number because the person thinks he's an identity theft victim. Extension, if this return's going on extension. If a return is being filed close to the deadline and you know the person is getting a refund, you do not have to file an extension form. He will not be penalized for filing a return late. But if some people getting close to the deadline, which is April 18th this year, and wants to file a return and goes on extension and has to pay, he knows he has to pay on the return, he has to file this form and he has to pay the tax due. Filing an extension extends the time the person files a return. It does not extend the time where he has to pay the tax. So if you know that if we're close to April 18th, we're preparing a return, the person owes money but doesn't want to file the return, he still has to make that payment by April 18th. So in that case, have him file an extension and have him pay the tax. Okay. COVID-19, let's take a look at that. Okay, yeah, guess what? The advanced child tax credit payments. Okay, what's the question here? This is very tricky. Did you have a place of abode in the United States for more than half of the year? Matter of fact, the answer is yes. Now, stop. If the person did not receive advanced child tax credits or the number of qualifying children, I went through this with TaxSlayer the other day. Do not answer these questions. Just get out of this. Hopefully you can, okay? Great. I had a problem with that. You know, I tried to say, oh, they have one qualifying child, no amounts. It screws up the program. You would only enter, yeah, let's go back to it. You would only enter information here and here if the person in fact did receive advanced child tax credits and how many qualifying children were used to take into account the advanced child tax credits, okay? There is none in this case. Do not enter anything here for people who did not receive the advanced child tax credit and had no qualifying children for that advance payment, which was none. Make sure you don't answer it. Hit save. Saves a lot of time. Again, another quirk in the program, apparently. The recovery rebate payment, well, yeah, they received it, right? Yes. We received the payments. How much did they receive? $2,400 for himself and Alice. Is he going to get one for his other child, Emily? We shall see.
Emil again is 2,800.
Oh, I'm 14 each, right? Sorry. Yeah, sorry. So again, even the checklist is wrong. I put 2,400. It should be 2,800. 2 times 1,400. Sorry about that, guys. Another typo in the checklist. Okay, and that is important. Why? Because as you can see, this number on the right has changed even more. It's gone up even more. Isn't that nice? That's important. And thank you, Tom, for catching that. Tom, as you can see, is a very good and diligent manager.
Let me just answer one of the Q&A questions.
Sure.
Someone actually mentioned about Emily having the recovery rate or the third stimulus payment. Right now in this program, it's actually including her third stimulus payment in there. Hopefully you see that. If you don't, I don't know if Emil could show exactly what that refund is from.
I can. And yeah, I did some calculations, so I know what the numbers are. And we will go into what the final product looks like, okay? So in other words, what makes up this number, okay? I can show you that, guys, all right? Okay, so anything else that has to be answered? Oh, yes. We have to answer this question about health insurance on the federal side. And again, did they get anything from the marketplace or the exchange? The answer is no. Okay. So in terms of the bulk of the questions on the federal return, it's been done. Again, let's go to the state screen. We've already been there before. Again, go here to enter some information, right? Again, they're asking the same questions as before. New York City resident, non-resident in Yonkers, full-year resident in the city. Yes, yes, yes. We don't have to answer this stuff. Okay. Again, these are for part-year New York City residents. You know, I don't want to give it short change. But again, this number was, well, if they were not full-year New York City residents and they moved in and out of New York City, then you would have to answer the questions here. That is the purpose of this part of the New York City screen. So I do not want to give it short shrift. I shouldn't go across, you know, go haphazardly back and forth. Okay. This question here, permanent address different? No, the answer is no. Okay. Let's look at the additions to income. That's important, I think, right? Other additions. I don't see anything here. So what I'm interested in, ladies and gentlemen, is are they going to enter the 414H contribution? Again, I don't know if you can see it on your version of the checklist, excuse me, of the program. Let's see if we can do it. Exit New York, exit this, calculating the return, okay? Okay. While that's calculated, let me see if I can call up something else for you. Hold on one second. Let's see. Sorry. I'm all over the place here. Trying to get back. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we're at the final point now of the return. Apparently, you guys can only have what's on the federal screen. So this is what the federal return looks like, and we can explain where this 9672 comes from. Okay, this is what the return looks like. And again, after you review this, you give it into the manager. Information about the return, it's finally spelled correctly. Numbers, Emily's the daughter, that's the wages, this income. Standard deduction, you can check that to the ready reference. Income subject to tax, line 50 is that number, 10,048. Page 2 of the 1040. And the form itself is not popping up, but 1,003 is the calculated tax. And what we have here, $3,600 being the withholdings from Ralph's W-2. Let's see. One second, 2,075 is the calculated earned income credits. 3,600 is a refundable child tax credit for newborn for Emily. Remember, newborn under age 6 gets $3,600 as a child tax credit. None of this was given to them in advance. Unfortunately, you don't see the form itself at this point. $1,400 is the additional recovery rebate credit for Emily. Emily never got it, the parents did. So as you can see, Taxpayer is calculating the proper amount of credits. Oh, there it is. It took a little bit of time. The W-2 withholdings, the calculated earned income credits, the refundable child tax credit for the newborn who's under age 6, the recovery rebate credit. This is Emily's recovery rebate credit. All of these numbers exceed 1,003, the tax. That is Rouse and Alice's refund. Almost $10,000 on the federal return in total on wages of $35,000. Almost 1/3 of Ralph's annual wages is being given back to him in the form of credits, in the form of this good refunds. So you guys did a good job helping this family out with that extra money that they can use. Okay. Again, because of your permissions, I'm not really sure if we can look at a state return, but I can do this for you guys. Let's see if I can do this for you. Let's see.
Emil, definitely they cannot review the actual state tax forms. When you get a chance to go into the e-file menu, let's just go through the IDs and also the bank accounts, the
Okay.
direct deposits.
Okay, I think we can do that, but also, guess what, guys? I have done this in advance with another computer on the side. So this is the final printout. And I do want to show you the state return. Okay, this is the state return. Okay. That's the federal AGI. Guess what? It is picking up the addition, the $2,000, the 414H contribution. This is the standard deduction amount for married filing jointly. You'll get that from the checklist, the ready reference. One dependency exemption for Emily, other than the taxpayers. That's New York taxable income, line 37. New York State calculated tax, New York City calculated tax, line 54. That's the total taxes. Guess what? We have the New York State version of the earned income credit, which is a percentage of the federal. We have the New York City, again, percentage of the federal. The school tax credit, remember the $125? $34 is an additional New York City school tax credit for people who have earned income, wages. That's a calculated amount. We don't emphasize that too much on community tax aid. Withholdings from Rouse W-2, those are the total payments. That's the tax. That's how we're getting $3,250. Okay. As you can see in this example, Ralph is getting into a paper check, but like Tom said, let's talk about entering information for e-filing. Hopefully I can do that for you guys. Where do we go? Oops, sorry. Okay. We're back at the program, and Tom said, let's go to the e-file screen, all right? And yeah, this is, I've seen this before, Tom. This is very strange. Look at the error it says here. Child tax credit may be missing some information. It's not. You know, this is kind of like a really quick in the program. And I went to this with the TaxSlayer people. This should not be happening. And if you try to review it, it's going to bring you back to this little screen of ours. But we've entered it the right way. It's like going in a circle. I think it's some sort of flaw with the program. Okay. But anyway, when it comes to e-filing, we can't go any further, Tom. We're going to get that again.
Can you do the state section?
Well, we've done the state
Can
section.
you try to continue?
Okay, so you ignore that apparently, ladies and gentlemen. You know, when it comes to the advanced child tax credit payments, it's coming up with that warning. In other words, there's a qualifying child there, and the program expects you to enter information about an advance payment. It didn't happen. It does happen that people will not have gotten the advanced child tax payment. Anyway, you guys are right. We just hit continue, and we're going to the due diligence checklist. Let's go to this. These are 8867 questions. You can look at Form 8867. Was the taxpayer a non-resident alien for any part of the year? No. This is also on page 4 of the checklist, the earned income credit section. Taxpayer or the spouse of qualifying child of another? No. Completed the return based on information provided by the taxpayer? Yes. Did you interview the taxpayer, ask adequate questions? Yes. Did you review adequate information to determine? Yes. I'm giving it short shrift, but really read these questions thoroughly and answer them correctly. It might deny the person getting certain credits, or it might prevent you from completing the return, okay? Did the information provided by the taxpayer third party vis-a-vis known to you in connection appear to be incorrect? No, right? Did you satisfy the record retention requirement? See here, you have to keep a copy of all the documents. Well, we're doing that. It is the checklist. It is a copy of the documents. The checklist has a copy of all the responses. The answer is yes. Okay. It says, would you like to put in notes? We don't have to because we have our checklist and the copies of the documents. Okay. Did you ask the taxpayer whether he could provide documentation to substantiate eligibility for the amount of the credits? Yes. In other words, we went to our understanding of filing status. Okay. Did you ask the taxpayer if any credits were disallowed? Yes. Again, it's in the checklist, page 4. Were any of these disallowed? No. Now they're asking questions about Emily. Okay. Is Emily a qualifying child of another taxpayer? No. Remember from page 3, determining the qualifying child of Emily? That's where you're getting some of the responses to these questions. For the earned income credit, have you determined that this taxpayer is in effect eligible to claim the number of children for whom the EIC is being claimed? Yes. Did you explain to the taxpayer that he or she may not claim the EIC if the taxpayer did not live with the child for over half of the year, even if the taxpayer supported the child? Yes. Do you explain the taxpayer the rules about claiming the EIC when the child is a qualifying child of more than one person? Remember the tiebreaker rules? It's not applicable here, but no need to explain it, but you did. Those are the tax breaker rules, which I gave you a copy of last week. The child tax credit questions, again, all of these responses you'll see on Form 8867, which is the due diligence checklist. A couple of years ago, this form was not required to be sent with the return. Now it is required to be sent with the return. Very important that you answer these questions thoroughly. Did the child reside with the taxpayer who was claiming this credit? Yes. Did you explain to the taxpayer that he or she may not claim this if the taxpayer has not lived with the child for over half of the year, even the taxpayer supported the child, unless the child custodial parents were released to claim? Yes. Did you explain the taxpayer rules of claiming this for a child that supports separated parents? Yes. It's not happening here, but the answer is yes. Did you certify that all the answers to 8867, the due diligence checklist, complete and correct? Yes. Continue. Okay. So based on that, yeah, certified qualifies for the due diligence, right? Okay, answered, notes, answered, certified, right? Certified, great. Not necessary, a miscellaneous statement, okay. Return details. Oh, Tom, well, it looks like we're at that e-file section. So again, there was a quirk in the program, as you saw, about that error in the federal side that had to do with advanced child tax credit payments. As you can see, based on what Keisha and Tom said, just hit continue, ignore it. We've entered it correctly. For this return, there were no advanced child tax credit payments. There were no qualifying children on which an advanced child tax credit payment was made. Yet that error comes up. That's kind of silly to me. But this is important that we want to see, which is what we're on, the e-file screen. So we're saying that we're going to e-file this return for this person, right? Federal return, how would you like to send the return? We want to send it with direct deposit in this case, okay? The state return, how do we want to send the state return? We want to send a direct deposit. Remember about only transmitting a state return? Again, for somebody who's going to file a paper return because of, say, identity theft issues, something like that. Okay, we can transmit in some cases just the state, not the federal. Okay, To confirm the information below for the e-file signature. So we have to put in the information about the email address. So let's put in Ralph's or Alice's. Ralph at. Okay. And we're asking for Alice. Okay. Continue. We don't charge a fee. You can ignore that. Bank account information. So again, from page 1 of our checklist, they gave us the information on the bank account on which they want the refund directly deposited to. This is extremely important, ladies and gentlemen. It's a savings account. The routing number, it shouldn't be that. It should be 021-123-421. Make sure that the routing number is put in correctly. You're getting that from the checklist. Make sure you can try to trace this to information that the taxpayer is giving us. After a while, when we deal with certain banks, for example, Chase, TD Bank, JP Morgan, et cetera, we will know what these routing numbers are. It's an identification number of the bank. We'll have a list of these things. As a matter of fact, one of our managers, I believe, has a list of the commonly used banks we use. Okay, so you're going to know these routing numbers. But again, I cannot emphasize how important it is to put in these numbers correctly. And as you can imagine why. We don't want this person's refund going to someone else's bank account, right? So again, what is the bank account number? What is it per the checklist? 00-888-3467. They want us to confirm this. 00-8834. I put in the wrong number purposely. Why? Because we're going to get that. Please fix that error. Again, I did that deliberately to show you how important it is and making sure that you entered the same thing correctly twice. 00-888-3467. Continue. Okay.
Emil, you gotta hit back. You forgot to change the bank name.
Where is the bank name? Oh, of course, it's my name. It is called Chase. Okay, whoops. Learn how to spell, Emil. I hope somebody reviews my work. Okay. Chase Bank, guys. Don't say. Okay, state license number. Again, that's the information on Ralph and Alice's ID card. Now, in some cases, believe it or not, somebody won't have this. No driver's license, a state ID card. That could happen, right? They just don't have it. A lot of people will give you, say, a city ID card. That is not an acceptable form of ID for purposes of filing return. As you can see, it's a state ID card, which is a driver's license in New York State or a New York State identification card. If the person moved in recently from New York, from another state, and that state's ID card is still valid, we can use that state's ID card, okay? As long as it's still valid, okay? But ask for it. And believe it or not, in some cases, we can still e-file this return without this. Why do we emphasize getting this? Because again, it gives you a layer of security protection, especially on filing a state return for these taxpayers, okay? So we do have a driver's license, and we do have it for both of them, right? And it is for Ralph, 844-703-295. And the issue date was 04-04-2018. And the issue date is New York. And the expiration date is 03-01-2028, it looks like. Okay. The document ID, it's asking for the first 3 letters or digits. In this case, it's 3LS. And again, that information will be on the front of the card or on the back of the ID card, okay? It's asking for Alice's as well. Alice's has a driver's license as well. What's her number? 979-426-791. The issue date says here 06-08-2020. It's from New York. The expiration date is 04/22/30/30. Okay. Document ID, the first 3 digits here say,
I think you mean 2030.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Just want to give you guys a note is that some people might bring in their passports or a copy of passport. That is also an acceptable identification.
778 is the ID number. Hit continue. Hopefully got everything right here. Okay, continue. And submission page, okay? We're not gonna submit this because of course it's not real. But again, the return status tags. Again, before COVID, we had what's called the storefront. So we want to group all of our returns based on the storefront, okay? This is a new to community tax aid. So there might be a box here saying new to community tax aid, or maybe they're from the Midwest side storefront or the Chelsea storefront. We're trying to stay.
No. Sorry to interrupt. You gotta click on view all return tags.
Okay, there it is. So these are more or less our storefronts. We want to stay consistent and group them, the returns that way. Let's see. I don't see it here. E-file accepted. Waiting for e-file accepted. Well, okay. Waiting for e-file. Let's call it waiting for e-file. Okay. And then we're just going to save and exit. And that's it. So if you wanted to go to the client search, you're now going to see Mr. Landon's return done by me in progress. So eventually you guys will notify the manager and say, Landon's return is done, have somebody review it. And that is how you prepare a return using our tax software. I thank you so much for, again, my technical glitches on this side. Hope I've given this a very good presentation, informative for you guys, and hope you've gotten a lot from it. You're going to be using this program a lot in the early days of our tax season. You guys can work in pairs in terms of working with the returns, in terms of interviewing and entering returns together. We'll try to do that. We'll try that for the new volunteers. We'll try to have like a group presentation where we'll have a volunteer and somebody join us on a Zoom meet with a taxpayer, and we'll prepare that return, and you guys will take notes, I guess, in the early weeks, and then after a while, you guys will do it on your own. So I thank you so much for listening to my part of the lecture, and now Tom is ready with his part, I believe. I stopped sharing, Tom.
Okay, guys, how are you? My name is Tom. I have been with CTA for the probably last maybe 11 years, and this is probably, for every one of us, this would be the second year that we're doing the remote tax prep, okay? With the IDs, okay, someone actually said something about how do we find the document number. This is a web page that I will give you, so hang in there. So it's only the first 3 letters that we need. So in this case is ASD, okay? There's other types of IDs here. You could go on this web page from the DMV of New York, and you could look it up that way, okay? There will be a link for it. Let me first go over what we have to do, okay? I'm gonna put this slideshow on. Let's get some terminology in place first, okay? Last year, we have something called rooms if you were a returning volunteer. If you are new to the Google Workspace, last year it was also called rooms. This year, they call it spaces, okay? I will show you where everything is. There's also the chat features where you could, I don't want to say like instant messenger, but if someone's online, we're going to be able to find an experienced volunteer to get you help in terms of when you're doing your taxes. especially to the new volunteers for CTA. There's also a task tab. If you're looking on my screen, it's somewhere here, it's highlighted, okay? This is my screen capture for it. We're gonna go into details of it in the live session, okay? And we're gonna be using Google Meet. Not because I say this is the must thing to use. If you have your own Zoom account and you wanna connect with your taxpayer with a Zoom account, is that going to be an issue? Probably not. But as long as you communicate to the taxpayers that you're using your CTA NYC.org account, because the taxpayers are going to be looking for it. We don't want to be responsible for if you're sending something out from your personal email and then get caught in some type of scam or something like that. Security is one of our biggest issue in terms of tax documents. So we do need to make sure that we keep them in a very safe place. Let's just go through it, okay? This year, all volunteer will self-assign. Oh, let me just close this window. Self-assign a client in the task tab when a taxpayer is available. I don't want to say this. Some people might say, I'm going to be on it every single day to check if I could get a taxpayer. They're probably going to get it first. What I'm going to tell you is that for those who are, that is in need of CPE credit, all you have to do is to just email me and I will actually reserve some taxpayers for you. For the first few weeks, I could tell you it's going to be very slow to come in, okay? As of the moment, I could tell you I have a total of 4 taxpayers in my hands, okay? 2 of them actually just came in this morning as taxpayers. Another thing is that when we're doing pairing last year, even Emil was mentioning it before. You could do the interview or you could do the computer work. Last year, based on that fountain house room or the space that we had, it worked out pretty well. And we're probably going to be doing a very similar thing this year. But at the same time is that if you're just interested in doing the computer work, I'm going to ask you to go into the CTA 2020 pairing room space and just say, hey, I would like to do the computer work, and see if anyone else would respond to it, okay? We'll get that live demonstration in a few minutes. I got about another 2 points to, 4 points to mention. Once you have self-assigned, self-assigning is just more or less clicking on a button and look for your name and you put your name on it. And an assistant manager will actually send you those files so you can actually contact the client with their documents. Which means that if you think about this, you already have the documents in hand. If you would like to pre-fill the checklist, you can do it, okay? That's how I did it when I was doing the virtual tax prep, is it saves you time. Instead of like asking, I don't want to say instead of asking the questions, every single question, is just that you already have those answers on the documents itself, and you're just asking them to verify this document. Once you get the documents, email the taxpayer. If the taxpayer does not have an email address, I would tell you, you will have to use your phone, okay? There's apps out there that would mask your own cell phones numbers, and it does use data plans. I hope that you're connected to a Wi-Fi when you're doing this, so it does not cost you anything on your data plan. Once you're finished with I shouldn't say once you're finished, because if you're separating them, the interview process and the computer work with a different person, once both of you are done with the task, you're going to check off and say, this is completed. And last and not least, once you check off that task, one of our assistant manager will get notified, and we will actually process the return to send the return to the manager for review. And afterwards, you're probably going to get a form from the manager saying what's missing, what's what did well, what didn't. So you get a review on what you want, what you can improve on later on. Let me just go into the live demo, okay? Because it's actually easier to explain it on the live demo. I see some questions on that. Keisha, can you just help out? If I could answer it live, I will. So the first thing is that you have to be on your CTA email, okay? If you're not logged in, if you have not received it, you should have received the email address and your temporary password on Monday. On Wednesday, you received the TaxSlayer username and password. With TaxSlayer, anyone who logs in TaxSlayer for the first time, they're going to ask you for a two-factor authentication, which means is either the phone number that you have given us through the Zoom, the basic training class registration, or your CTA email. Okay, those are the only two options that you have to authenticate who you are in TaxSlayer. Let me just take a look at the Q&A. Okay. So here's a couple of things that you need to know. Right down here on the bottom, this is where your spaces is. There's one for taxpayer assignment. There's one for Q&A. There is one for pairing room. So let's say, for example, if I were to go into the pairing room, okay, all I'm going to do is add a new thread. I like to have someone to enter TaxSlayer info. Okay, and hopefully someone replies. If anyone, just do a test for me if you're on the CTA email already. It is, again, it is inside the pairing room. If you don't see this, you see spaces, all you have to do is to click plus, and normally you would actually, on your end, you would actually see the CTA pairing rooms. On mine, because I'm already in it. Okay, Keisha. Okay, Keisha's, I was thinking of a volunteer. So good, okay. So this is a way that we could actually communicate to each other, and it blocks it in just to, just for that conversation, okay? And if someone else puts in something else in there, and what happens is that the person who has that interview is going to say, okay, I'm going to pick this person to help me to do the TaxSlayer info. If you're a computer guy and say, I want to get someone who interviewed someone, you might say, I want to do computer input, okay? And you could say, I want someone's computer input to do. And you could put that message on there and see if anyone responds to it, okay? On here, let's move on. We're going to go into the taxpayer assignment, okay? We're not going to do any chats in here because every time there's a task, the chat is going to be, there's going to be something inside the chat. The only thing that we're going to go in here for is the taskbar. Are there any questions? If you have questions, please post them in Q&A. If he should just monitor it because I'm not paying attention to it, or email. So here's what I have. I actually typed in 2 dummy returns, okay? And if you notice that whenever my mouse goes over it, I could assign it to someone, or someone can actually assign themselves. If any of you are on this taxpayer assignment space, please feel free to assign yourself with Jane Doe. If you're unable to get into the taxpayer assignment, oh, there's Richard, okay? So, how many? Okay, we got a problem here. Huh? Okay, 2 tasks completed. Okay, we gotta be very careful, okay? Because I see that people are able to edit this. I do have to figure a way to see if I could. Okay, I'm actually uncompleting it. So if you were to, okay, thank you. If you were to assign yourself, okay, you would just click on here on your own, and you would just put your name in there. If someone else is already assigned to something, do not change it, okay, please. And if you were to say, if David were to say, I only want to do the computer part, okay, can you guys not press complete for me, please? Thank you, appreciate it. If someone else wants to, if someone else actually wants to pair with David and he just wants to do the computer and someone, okay. Guys, can you guys just stop clicking the checkbox, okay, please? So with David, David's gonna ask someone, says, can someone help me to interview with Jane Doe? And this person is from Chelsea. So these are the names that you're going to refer back to when you're selecting the site location. And I could tell you the folder that's going to be coming to you is probably coming from the Chelsea folder also. If it's from the Corona, the location, it's going to give you Corona, okay? Are there any questions? So once you figure out who that person is, you're going to be able to click on here and you should be able to edit this. If David's still online, can you see if you could click on this and to edit, change Mickey Mouse to some other character for me, please? Let me take a look at the questions. Someone asked, why don't I see the taxpayer in my assignment in my email? It's not going into your email, okay? It is inside this taxpayer assignment room. Oh, someone changed the Donald Duck. Okay, okay. So you do not press the checkbox until you have finished the interview and the computer input. Does that make sense? Let me just take a look at the questions. You also get notification. Okay, looks like someone said they can't see they're in the CTA email. Make sure you're in Gmail, and on the bottom here there should be spaces.
If you're not, I was just checking the regular chat. If it's not appearing, you can click the plus symbol and you can search for all the spaces, and then you could just add yourself.
So right now, if you look at it, Jane Doe is already being paired with Donald Duck and David. And what happens that once they both finish, they click on this check and I will get a notification saying it's done. And do not delete anything until I make the deletion, because with tracking these returns, it gets very confusing afterwards if you were to separate them individually. It does help us to limit the conversation inside here compared to last year's of the Fountain House room. So if you're able to pair a volunteer yourself, it will be the best. If you don't want to work with anybody else and you still only wants to do computer work, we're gonna have to try to help you out in terms of finding people. But I would tell you, go into the parent room and just post something on there and say, hey, I would like to do computer work, and see who is willing to say, here, I'm gonna give you the computer work for you to enter. And once you say that, and you just let us know that that's what you want to do, we will give both of you access to those files. Any other questions? Just keep putting them in the Q&A. Someone says, can you work on your own tax return or a family member? I would say as long as it's within the income guidelines of CTA. The other thing is that you do have to complete a CTA checklist. It has to be, all the documents has to be in. Another thing is that we will have to get a, let's see, photo ID. When I say photo ID, because we are actually not seeing the person, we need photo identification to prove that they're that person. If you want to, if you still have questions, please post it up. Alex, can you please send me an email about that, about the CTA email, okay? It's tpoon@ctanyc.org. If you don't see any pairing room, please, if you do see spaces, click on the plus sign. It should show up. You could do browse spaces, and all three of these should come up.
And of course, Tom, it says spaces too because there's activity in those two spaces, correct?
That is correct. So that means that, which means that whenever there's a red light in there, that means there's activities. And for the managers, they are actually going to be pretty much looking at the taxpayer assignment and probably the Q&A. We will have people, or we'll have experienced volunteer monitor this chat probably 2 hours a day on the weekdays. and on the weekends, probably a good day, okay?
So generally speaking, if I can summarize, for myself too, we have information on a taxpayer. Look at the taxpayer assistance folder. Anybody can assign themselves to this. Now, if somebody wants to do the whole return, they can do the whole return, meaning interviewing and computer input. If not, they go into the pairing room and they ask somebody, would you like to do this part of the return? Is that correct?
Yes, it is. I just saw someone put it up on the Q&A, and you just answered that question for them.
Okay, great. And again, for somebody like myself, I really would be concentrated apparently in the Q&As. So I, as a manager, should monitor that, look at that about a return that I'm responsible for, and a preparer or computer input person might have a question about that, and I can answer it right there. Is that right?
Yes.
Great.
I see some Q&A questions about unable to get tax layer. Please, tax layer questions, account questions, you should wait until after the after this class, okay? I'm not going to be able to answer any of this right now, okay?
So generally, for all the volunteers there, when you open your Google email account, look at the spaces to the left. If you see something in bold, of course, there's some new information there that might pertain to something that you're involved with. So get into the habit of opening these spaces. And I'm going to get into the habit of that as well. So I'm learning as you go along with all the volunteers as well. So I thank you for this, Tom.
You're welcome. Are there any major questions? I'm just keep looking at the, I'm confused. Oh, someone answered it.
Tom, could you answer Tiffany's question? Because that's an important one. It's about marking something as completed.
So after you're done with the tax, we check the box and complete, even though the tax is not being reviewed by our. Okay, Tiffany, I'm going to answer this live. Once you check the box, it just comes back to us, letting us know that you have actually completed the tax layer portion of it. It actually gets later on sent to a manager of this location, and they would actually review the return, and they would know who you are that did the return, because on the checklist itself, hopefully by that time you have put your name on the bottom of that page 6 of the tax of the checklist, and we would know who you are that filled out the, if you are doing this separately, it would have 2 different names. One would be the interview with your name, and then if there's a different person with the computer input, you would actually be able, the manager would be able to see it. Okay, it's 2 people that did this return. Does that make sense? Hopefully I did that already.
Yeah, Tom, what do you think about having another live demonstration with the return that we just did with the landings?
Okay.
Let's try that, and like from start to finish.
So this would be, nope, not right. I'm going to be creating a new task right now. Okay, please don't create tasks on your own either. I think he's new to CTA.
Yes, yes, new to CTA, and that's Ralph Landon.
Yeah,
RALPH.
it's okay.
Yeah, it is. Except when you do the return, of course.
So normally I would add a time. Okay, I would try to give you guys a good week, and especially it should overlap the weekends.
So again, the date you're putting in is the date you want it assigned, or the date we get the information?
That is actually the date I like to have it done by.
Okay.
Usually I would give it a week, but this is just a demo. Okay,
Yeah, no.
so
I need to know for myself too. Thank you, Tom.
I'm not going, I mean, if it was today, it would be, if it came in today, I would put it the 12th, okay? So if you finish before that, that's fine, okay?
Okay.
As long as once you finish, you say, okay, can someone press the check, can Ari press the checkbox so it pops up in the complete section? Okay, so I get notification that Ralph is done.
Okay. So how about, for example, Ari just wants to do interview and somebody is going to do computer input. How do we handle that?
So when you do this, okay, so which one does she want? Does she want?
Say in this example, Ari wants to do the interview and somebody's going to do computer input. So we go to the other room, the pairing room, correct?
Okay, we're going to go in here. And Ari is going to put up a message saying that I need computer input for Ralph.
Okay. So she writes a message.
She would write a message. She would actually create a thread in here.
Okay.
Is she able to do that?
Yeah. Could you do that for us, Ari? You know, for purposes of this exercise? Okay. But I understand, Tom. So then the next question for me is, and maybe for some other people, the person who was going to do computer input, how does that person have access to the files? Oh, okay, here you go. Thanks, Ari. So how does that person get access to the files?
So once I see that, let's say this is the person's name.
Yaping. Thank you, Yaping.
Okay. Once Ari has selected one person to complete her the tax layer portion or the other portion, she would actually just put this in here. And then I would know both of you will need access to Ralph's files.
Okay.
Is there any questions? I know that there's 4 Q&As.
Okay. So we know.
Okay,
Okay.
there's someone that was asking while I do my first computer input, can I have someone so I can do it together? Yes, you can. You could have 3 people interviewing, but usually you would just have one person speaking. Okay.
And again, when it comes to computer input, we can create, say, a Google Meet where one person is going to do the computer input, the other people can watch. What we did, or what I tried to do in my first part of this lecture. You can watch what I'm doing. But again, Tom, my question now is, for this little example I was with Landon, how does Yaping get the files to start the computer input? How does that happen?
Once an assistant manager gets notified, the people that's on Landon's return will get a separate email where they would get the links to the files.
Great. Thank you. And so people like Ari and Yaping, look for your emails. Eventually,
not right now. Landon is
no, of course. No, of course. You know, but eventually, you'll see it in your email. You see that invitation to get the files. Okay, great. And then Yaping does the work. And then what happens after that? Yaping does the computer work. And then what's next, Tom?
Emil, sorry, say that again, please.
So again, Ari interviewed the taxpayer. Yaping finished the computer work. What's the next step?
They put a checkbox on here
Okay.
and it will notify me,
You, the AM, right?
or the AMs that you are complete with that
Right.
return.
And again, AM, ladies and gentlemen, is an assistant manager who's monitoring all of these rooms and the flow of information and the flow of the status of the returns. The AM and then is responsible for a manager. That person, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, the AM will notify the manager saying this return is ready to be reviewed. Me as a manager will go into TaxSlayer, have access to the documents. I believe we have that. And then look at the return itself on TaxSlayer. Correct, Tom?
That's correct.
When you notify me, again, I'll get an email too, correct? With the documents themselves. Is that correct, Tom?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the flow of information, guys. Make sure you look at your Google Mails. Make sure you monitor the spaces. Make sure you're ticking off things as completed when it's happening. Of course, this is new for everybody, and we're ticking things off left and right here because we want to see how things are done, and that's understandable. But make sure when you do all of these tasks, then you tick these things off, okay? So I thank you for this, Tom. Walking through it and asking these questions this way, if you don't mind, for somebody like me, a layman, when it comes to techie stuff, as you guys probably know by now, is important. But if you don't mind, Tom, for somebody like me, can we go through the Q&A room, the Q&A space?
This is actually the Q&A space.
Okay.
So if you have a question here, you would actually just create a new thread. Let's put in what is ETIC, okay? Is it? Oh, EITC. So someone is probably going to be answering it if that was a real question.
And I think we can use this, Tom, as well for somebody who says, I am available to do work. Can they write a chat here about that? Say, I'm available to do anything at a certain time?
Because if you want,
Or where would they put that?
Someone has to look at it. Okay?
Yeah, so when someone says it's a Sunday afternoon, it's 1 o'clock, they want to let us know that they're available to do work, how would they let us know?
I don't have an answer to that. So Emil, if you're trying to get to the point where Fountain House would like to have live virtual tax preparers, I think that's where he's trying to get to. Okay?
Well, yeah, and if you don't mind, Tom, I'll take it from here.
Okay.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be as busy based on the work we have, of course. And in some cases, we don't know when that work's coming in. We do know more or less when it comes to Fountain House when that work is coming in. And why do I say that? Because here at Fountain House, where I'm speaking to you right now, I'm trying to get things set here at Fountain House. We have a list of taxpayers that we're going to meet every Sunday from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. We're going to work on at least 12 returns on a Sunday from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Based on our understanding of some of the responses we're getting to our applications, we're not going to have as many people here live to take care of these people. That doesn't mean we can't do their work. It means that most likely the people who are here at Fountain House on Sunday from 1 to 5, we're going to do their returns virtually, which means that in terms of scheduling virtual tax preparers such as yourselves, such as people listening to this, we'll need committed people who are going to be available on Sunday from 1 to 5 saying, I'm available to do a virtual return. If that's the case, we can create a Google Meet more or less that time. We will have that taxpayer's information. Most likely it will be scanned. It can be sent to you and you can prepare the return to a virtual meet that same time. It's more or less a set schedule when it comes to Fountain House returns. So again, there's not too many people at this point who are going to be here live with me on Sundays. So we do need a commitment from you guys to be available Sundays from 1 to 5 to do virtual returns in that manner. Again, you'll be assigned somebody, you more or less get their returns. You can get a Google Meet at that same time. Why do I say that? Because we have computers here at Fountain House that these tax returns can access. You can send an email to their email account. They can open their email using one of the computers here. You can conduct your virtual interview that way. We're going to start doing returns at Fountain House here on February 13th, which is a week from tomorrow. So you can send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat saying I'm available to do virtual returns on Sundays from 1 to 5. Okay. Of course, what would be great for me is if you guys were here physically. Having you guys here physically would help me in terms of accomplishing my task here in Fountain House. Of course, we know the way we're living in today. This is not an easy decision for anybody to make, I would say. We would like you to be here for face-to-face interviews. The people at Fountain House, in terms of COVID protocols, they're very strict. They have people here. They have a database of everybody who walks into this building, and they're either taking their shots. They have all of their regular shots and their booster shots, or they're required to have a negative test within 72 hours. And this protocol that I just mentioned is strictly adhered to. And so far, when we've looked at the applications, and we looked at it the other day, I think, believe it or not, I think we 1 or 2 people who said, I am physically going to be here at Fountain House. Ideally, I would like to have more people here at Fountain House. If you're willing to come here to Fountain House, and we can give you the address and the outline, reach out to me with an email saying, Emil, I'm willing to do that. If you're willing to come here, and I will be here every Sunday for the 10 weeks we're scheduled to be here, you would need proof that you have got your shots or your booster shot. You have to present to the Fountain House people here proof that you have your COVID shots or that you've gotten a negative test within 72 hours, okay? That is important. Once we're here at Fountain House on Sundays, this building is more or less deserted, which means that we can conduct socially distanced interviews with our taxpayers. There is a second floor that nobody's there right now. And there are plenty of spaces right there where you can conduct returns, social distance returns. There are 5 or 6 computers here that we can access where you can conduct virtual meets for people who don't want to be here, who want to conduct virtual tax return preparation. And then, of course, that's great for somebody like me is after you prepare the return, let me know that you've done it, and I can review the return right here that you've done remotely. So it's win-win for everybody involved, okay? I'll put my email in the chat. I've given it to you before. Please let me know your availability. I thank you so much for listening to me about this. Hopefully it'll be fruitful for both of us. But again, there are other returns that will come, I won't say in a haphazard manner, in a manner that is unscheduled. In other words, we don't know exact schedule of when we'll get these returns. As Tom is alluding to, he'll try to assign these returns on weekends. We want to make sure that you guys have free time for yourself. Most likely, we'll try to get these returns to you at the weekends. Maybe depending on how busy we are, how many returns we get, that might not be the case. We might assign and get the information during the week. So hopefully you guys are available even during the week. Okay? I think that's all I wanted to say about Fountain House in particular and in terms of the flow of tax return information. So I give it back to you, Tom.
So Emil, let me give you an update. You do have, from this morning's update, we do have more than 10 people that are willing to be at Fountain House in person. I will give you those names, or I will give you access to that volunteer assignment form later on. So you could actually directly contact each person to see if their situation is comparable to based on what Fountain House COVID rules are. The other thing is that, let me just go through the drives, okay? This is something called Google Drive. Google Drive is actually a place for our storage. I know right now you got a blank screen, and I got a blank screen too, and it's not showing up. Give it a little time. So if you guys are looking at this, okay, on the left side of your screen, there's something called My Drive. If you don't know where to get this, it's very simple from your Gmail, okay? All you have to do is click here, Google Apps, and look for Drive. And once you click on this, it will bring you to your Google Drive. And this drive is going to actually help you guys out in the long run. First, you are going to get your files or your folders inside here, okay? Even though it might be in your email, but later on, it's going to say, oh, the folder is actually inside Share With Me, okay? And you should be able to see that afterwards if you accidentally deleted the original email. The other thing is that we have something called share folders, okay? I have more share folders than what you will be able to see, okay? There is actually something called volunteer folder. If you do see it, please open it when you can. It does have a basic training class info in there. I know that it might not be the latest version of everything, but it should have most of the stuff, okay? If it's not, just relax. You still have the other link that you could actually get access to it, but this is something that you cannot get a link unless you are within the CTA email address or when you're logged into CTA. So one of the things is that I'm going to mention checklists, okay? There is 3 checklists. Okay, we didn't have a 2018. If you want to sort this by name, okay, you're gonna notice that John, Doe John, which means his last name first, their last 4 social security number, and the year that you're working on. So these are the 3 different checklists from 2019, 2020, 2021. These are the tax year, not the tax season. So what I'm telling you is that right now, even though we're in 2022, we are preparing the 2021 tax returns. So when we're talking about 2018, you might say, hey, I don't have a checklist on that. Yeah, we don't. We never actually created a online checklist because we weren't affected by COVID at that time. We actually had all the storefronts open and everything was done on a paper checklist. And that's why we don't have one. If you have a taxpayer that wants to do a 2019 return, you could actually open this up, okay? Make sure when you guys are doing this, you guys are actually downloading this. So if I were to click on this, I might say, hey, it opens up in Chrome or it opens up in whatever you're doing, but how come I can't fill it out? It's because you're not downloading the file. You actually will want to download this file and open it in Acrobat. I'm doing the 2019 return is because we could actually do 18, 17, and 16 with this checklist. If you notice, it's already, let's see if it's going to open in my Acrobat. Let me just see. Let me answer this. How many hours do volunteers typically spend on the tax return? I could tell you that for myself, probably an hour, depending on the technical difficulty of the return. Yes, I need. I don't know what this one is asking about. I'm free on Fridays. Guys, leave those questions.
Tom. I'm answering that, Tom. I'm answering that one.
Okay. So, where's my open? Okay, right now it's actually opening in the wrong program. It's actually opening in inside Chrome. I just want to see if it does work or not. I could tell you that right now, you do prefer to open it up in Acrobat. So if you were to type this in, okay, you could pretty much type everything in here. And then at the end, just make sure you hit save. If you close the browser by accident, you will lose everything. I hope I'm clear on this. If you accidentally close your browser, you will lose everything. If you don't save your file back onto your computer, you will lose everything. It does not save on this checklist. I hope that is clear to you. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to close out the 2019 checklist. And I'm going to open up my Acrobat. The Acrobat reader is fine with this already. So you don't have to like pay for separate software. It's just Acrobat reader actually uses the PDF to its maximum capability because it's from Adobe. Loading. Let's see who else has a question. While it's still loading. Fridays and Saturdays. Okay. For Fridays, I don't know if there's an in-person location to volunteer. We might have pickup locations. That's why when you're answering our volunteer assignment form, we ask you if you're willing to do pickups, okay? Dan is gonna have those answers for you later on. If you say yes, we're gonna contact you. If you say no, we're probably not going to say we have positions available to be in person on a Friday or whatever day it is that we have that opening. So it is critical for you guys to answer that volunteer assignment form so we know what you can do, okay? The other thing is that for the experienced taxpayer, or if you're comfortable with doing taxes on your own, you could do this pretty much any day that you like. It is just when we have new volunteers and they have multiple questions, we would not be able to help you as much as we can on weekdays than if we are on weekends. I'm still waiting for my Acrobat to load up. Don't know what's going on.
Yeah, Tom, if I can say something while that's happening. A couple more things you need to know about Fountain House, guys. For people who are going to be here face-to-face at Fountain House, please bring your computer. Please bring your laptop computer. We have a couple of extra computers here that we'll still do testing on. We'll see if it's working in terms of getting our passwords up and running. But we ask you to bring your computers, and that way you can work on these returns using the online version of Tax Slayer. We will give you access to the internet here at Fountain House. We have that. So you can use your computers to access the Tax Slayer program to prepare the returns here. Okay? Now somebody asked about Saturday work. I will say this, that again, we're dedicated to be here on Sunday starting Sunday, February 13th. I got that date wrong. It's Sunday, February 13th. We are planning to have Saturday sessions starting Saturday, February 19th. Saturday, February 19th. Now, we don't know how busy we're going to be on Saturdays, so we have made that announcement more public. We can talk about this a little bit more thoroughly tomorrow at the volunteer forum. If you're in the volunteer forum, I can talk about that more. I just give it back to Tom now.
I'm opening the files. Just give me a minute more. So this is the 2019 checklist. If you're doing the 2019 tax return and that client needs all 3 years or all 4 years of return done, these are the special checklists that if you want to use it. If not, you could actually use the 2021 checklist and just go from there. Still loading. Almost there. Just hang in there, guys. Let me see what else do you have. Can you resubmit our assignment form? I think I put something in there where you're allowed to change your answers. So if you were to go back using your CTA email account, you should be able to do that. Okay, so if you look at this right now, it's not all popping up yet because it's still loading. If you were to click on this highlight existing field, it will actually turn all of this into like blue color. So those are the spaces that you can actually fill in. As of the moment, my Acrobat is still loading. It does take you time to, I mean, depending on how old your computer is, mine's about 5 years old, so it does take a little while. So in this case here, you could type in anything that you want, just like if Emil was live doing the checklist before, okay? Everything's on here. Just make sure at the end you do File, Save As, PDF, and just change the name of the file to the actual person. In this case, it was before it was Landon, Ralph, and let's pretend that's the Social Security, last four Social Security number, and just hit save. And you will have to put this file inside a folder where you get where we share the documents from. So if you guys were to say that, let's see. Okay, let's go into 2020 last year's folders, and I'm just going to go into the Browns folder for the sake of it. You will receive one of these share folders in your email or whoever the client that you picked. And what happens is that you're going to be pressing new, and you're going to upload file or the PDF that you have saved for the checklist into the folder that you received. So Ralph, this is the one that I just did, and all I'm going to do is just open it. It's going to bring it into this root folder here. You won't be able to see this folder. You will be able to see the stuff that's inside the taxpayers folder. So everything that you took a look at, the documents, is where you're going to put in the checklist. I see 2 questions on here. Is there something we should be doing tax layer now? No, we're not doing anything in tax layer, okay, as of the moment. Did I miss anything, Keisha, in terms of uploading files in Google Docs?
One question I saw is one person was saying that they currently have nothing in their Google Drive. Did we already share everything to everyone's Google Drive or no?
Okay, folks. So here's one thing I'm going to ask you. Just see if you could click on the share folders. You should not see these two folders. You should be able to see this volunteer folder. If you do not, I will try to fix it and figure out what's wrong with it. It's most likely that your email was not put into the group, but it should have everyone's email on it. So if that's the case, I will check that out. The other thing is that once you're inside this folder here, volunteer folder, not just the checklist, computer class information is going to be here. The outlines. Another thing that we need to look for is the NYC 210 forms. Okay, I don't want to say a lot. Some of our taxpayers will only need to have the NYC 210 completed. Maybe Emil could explain that a little bit more if he can.
Sure, Tom. Yeah, would you like? I'm sorry, go ahead.
20 more seconds. These are the 2021, 2019, and 18. Please do not attempt to fill all of them out. Let me backtrack. Please do not attempt to fill out a different year with a different year form that you're supposed to. So let's say if they were trying to fill in a 2021 form, please make sure you pick the 2021 form. If they need to go back a couple of years, please make sure that if they're filing for 2019, pick the 2019 form. Go ahead, Emil.
Okay. Again, when it comes to the NYC 210 form, and it's a common form we'll see at Community Tax Aid, really boils down to two criteria, and that was mentioned in training. It's also on the bottom at page 5 of your checklist. What's the two criteria? One is, did the person live in New York City the whole year? If the person lived in New York City the whole year and they're a single individual, they are entitled to $63. If they're a married couple and they lived in New York City, both spouses, and they lived in New York City the whole year, they're entitled to $125. That's an easy criteria to think about. The second one is not so easy, a little bit cloudy. And this question is, and again, it's on page 5 of our checklist, can, not exactly did, can this taxpayer be claimed as a dependent by someone else? I'm going to repeat that. Can this person be claimed as a dependent by someone else? Not that he was, but could he have been? That is the way the question is phrased on this form. So if the answer to that question is no, he cannot, or he's not able to be claimed as a dependent on someone else's form, then he qualifies for the NYC 210. And we see this a lot, believe it or not, at Community Tax Aid. Why? We have a lot of elderly people on fixed incomes. Their family has grown up and moved away. Nobody's claiming them as dependent. Nobody can claim them. They're independently sustainable. They have no other sources of income other than the benefits they received. And they lived in New York City all of 2021. If that's the case, they can file this form and they can get $63 in their pockets. Still have to file a checklist on everybody. Remember what we said last week? Everybody who walks in our door, no matter how simple or complex the form is, we have to follow a checklist. And again, if no one has ever filed this form, we can go as far as 4 years to 2018. And remember why we said that? Because if somebody's getting a refund, they have until April of this year in order to get that refund. So we do see this where we're preparing 4 NYC 210 forms for these people, okay? Again, we'll see it in the case of retired people or people who receive government benefits and unfortunately can't work because they're disabled and they don't work and they receive government benefits. Not necessarily taxable income. You don't necessarily have to file a tax return, but we can do this for them, okay?
Okay, so this is the 2021 NYC 210 forms. I will have to update it because there's some bottom information that I didn't get a chance to fill in. But this is actually the form. So again, it's type in, okay? Make sure you save this to your computer so you could actually like save it instead of working in the browser, because if you close it in the browser, all this information is gone. Okay. Maybe, I mean, if you don't follow this, you close the browser and you will say, where's all my information? By that time, it's going to be too late. Okay. Let me see if I need to cover anything inside here. Volunteer folder. There's one more thing that I need to show you guys. Okay. This is, let me backtrack first. Inside the volunteer folder, there's something that's called general information. Okay. This is actually a file that I have created. Emil actually put some information. I think everyone knows irs.gov, tax newyork.gov. Okay. Most of you know it. Even if you don't know, you could pretty much search for it. There's also an IRS online account if the taxpayers wants to create one and to find their documents. This is actually the link to the New York State doc numbers. This is the same page as here. Okay, this is the same page. So if you have questions about where the New York State doc number is, document number is, it's all over the place depending on what type of license that you have. So if you have questions about that, you could look through that. This is under this horizontal line. It's a lot of our information. This is your login, okay? Tax layer, if you don't remember the web address, it's here. There's also something called the volunteer timesheet. Let me see if I could copy this. So at the end of your shift, okay, whatever time that you're doing, okay, let's say, for example, if you're starting at 10 o'clock in the morning and you start interviewing a taxpayer, you finish at 12 or maybe 11:30, okay? And you're not doing the computer stuff, or you're doing the computer stuff, just put this information in there so we would have it and we would be able to track time for you. Okay, you should fill this out every time you're working with us or volunteering for us. What else is in the general? The computer training stuff. Hold on. The Google Drive, if you want there. We actually have an intake form for the taxpayers. If for any sake, okay, if a taxpayer is saying that I have other documents, if they have came through our intake form, they could actually go back in there and fill out the necessary information and to give us more documents. If they want, they could actually directly email you because they already have your email, because you made the first contact with them in terms of like, let's schedule a an interview. The YouTube videos is here. There's also 2 checklists. Excuse me. There's also 2 checklist videos that that Emil and I made. One is for the computer training 1, which he made himself, and then we have actually had a tax layer interview video also. It is inside. I think right now it's inside the computer class folder. There's one here. The other one's actually here. So this is to show you how we interview. We would like you guys, if you're not familiar with how to interview, we would like you to actually watch this video so you can actually understand how to interview a person. Another thing is that if you're new to CTA, you could always ask someone saying that, hey, in the parent room, I need help with interview. Is there anyone else who could pair with me to help me out to interview this taxpayer? We can always give you the files to multiple people as long as they're actually doing the tax return. So this is all you have to do is to ask. And if you ask saying that this person's going to help me out with the tax return or on the interview part, we will give that person access to that folder that you have also.
Can I, excuse me, Tom, can I say something about the links that we have there?
Yes.
Okay, you know, even though we have some links there and we think it's valuable that you have it, it's like shortcuts in terms of getting certain things. We've noticed, and this has happened recently, that the IRS in particular has changed its website. So if you were to try to find out the status of a stimulus payment or an advanced child care payment, you just cannot go on that link and enter the information. If you want to even try it now, Tom, I can show them what I'm talking about. The government is requiring taxpayers to create an account to access this information. That seems like a recent change. So the taxpayer may have to create an account, or maybe they've already had an account. So what's called the IRS online account and hitting a link or two would not automatically get this information that we need. So in other words, it's kind of like a little obstacle in our way is what I'm trying to say.
I would say that last week when we were doing the training, it was available, and somehow between last Saturday and this Saturday, it just changed.
Yeah, and if you guys for homework, you can even do this tonight. I'll try to do it tonight, and we can talk about it tomorrow at the volunteer forum about navigating through these links that we think are helpful, and we'll see how it goes, okay?
So again, this file, if you don't see the volunteer folder, email me, okay? I have emailed every single one of you already, so you have my email. So I'm one of them. Just keep asking you guys, don't send thank you emails, not because I don't want it. It's just that it would bombard my email address, my inbox so much that it just becomes ridiculous. Only ask if there's a real serious questions about things. If you have an account issue, send it to me. I will answer them as quickly as I can, okay? If you're missing the volunteer folder and you still don't see it, then it's an issue. But when I'm looking at this right now, I see there's a lot of people in here already. So that means that you guys are looking at this document already. Anything else that I need to go over with the volunteer folder? There's the email template, okay? So when we actually create a template for you to send an email to this taxpayer, okay? All you're doing is pretty much copy and pasting the stuff, okay? From here to down here, thank you, and put your name on it, put the date and the time, and then the subject line, okay? Make sure that you're using your cta.nyc.org email, because There's other people that's, that they're calling, trying to get tax information and do all those, what's that word? Scrupulous things. So be careful on when you're doing it over the phone, okay? Some people, from my experience last year, some people didn't want to pick up a phone because it came from a different number other than a CTA number. We do not have a CTA number at all. We're relying on you to call those taxpayers. Again, you do need to use one of those apps that will give you a second number on your phone, so you can use Wi-Fi to call taxpayers. But if they don't pick up, just let us know. Just let your AM know, whoever that person is going to be contacting you or gave you the files, just say, hey, this person is not responding. And especially the dates that we talked about, especially inside the assignment space. If you see that I had this taxpayer for a whole week and I only contact them once and they didn't reply, try to contact them at least a second time. Maybe the second time they will pick up the phone. If maybe they're out of town and they might not respond to the email. If there's any issues with a taxpayer, just let us know, okay? Give it a couple of days. They usually will respond because they actually gave us their tax documents to us. Another thing is that I don't know if you guys know how to create Google Meets meetings. So I'm just going to go through that very quickly. I'm hearing things, but I'm not sure what is it about because I'm not looking through it. All you have to do is go into your calendar. And let's say you say that, okay, you ask them if Saturday is available. And the next Saturday is the 12th, okay? And they said, yes, on the 12th at 10 o'clock, I want to have a meeting with you, okay? All you're going to do is click on the 12th. And you're going to say, let's go with John Doe. Let's go with Ralph. And you're going to set up a time, just say 10 o'clock in the morning. I think this is, and you could set 10 to 11. If you think it's going to be half an hour, but as long as you get there at 10 o'clock and they're expecting you at 10 o'clock, you're meeting in the same room at the same time if you're doing Google Meets. If you don't know where Google Meets is, there's two places that you could find it. One is here. The other, if you're in your email, let me close this. It's all the way down here, okay? Okay, it's all the way down here on the bottom where it says meet. It's hiding behind something right now. Don't want to close this because this is Zoom. If I close it, it might close out everyone. I see a couple of questions.
Yeah, Tom, one that Keisha answered, but I think it's important. Somebody doesn't want to use their personal phone number to reach out to a taxpayer. And Keisha wrote about the phone number used in a Google Meet. Can you explain that?
If you want to use the Google Meet, let me just give you guys this, okay? Let me go back to this. if you guys look at this, I gotta close this. Okay. I can grab it.
Looks like a big letter T in front of us.
Yeah, I know. Hold on. So if you actually, hey, it's frozen. Create Google Meet. Nope, not notes. Okay, you're gonna add the conferencing on here, and where is it? Nope, that's not it. Hold on. Okay, so what happens that if you notice more joining options? Nope, that's not it. Once you create this, okay, and you add, I'm not going to actually, okay, not going to write his correct email because if it does send it, I'd rather it bounce than send it to someone, okay? So what happens that it will give them the option to call a US number, and they would be able to connect with you by dialing this number and the PIN, and they would be able to get into your Google Meet room. Okay, if they refuse to use Google Meet completely, tell them to dial this phone number and dial this PIN, because it is very similar to Zoom. Zoom offers you that you could call in to listen on the phone, or you could connect through the computer or any device.
So of course, excuse me, Tom. So of course that means that our virtual tax preparer has to have this open, say a couple of minutes before the meeting starts. The person's going to indicate, I'm going to use that phone number. Once that happens, through the computer, the person will get a response and then they'll talk that way. Is that right?
Right. That's only if they have an email. If they don't have an email, that's going to be more of a challenge because they will only have a phone number for you to contact. And we do have those situations where we only have those contact by phone numbers only. In that case, I would say that I'm not asking you to use your own cell phone. I'm asking you to use an app to actually solve this problem. I don't know how to actually tell you guys how to do it.
Or they can block their phone number. I believe Apple has a function where you can swipe and it will block your number from showing up in people's phones.
Right. The other thing is that you could get a virtual number like using Talk-a-Tone or Google Voice. They give you a separate phone number and stuff like that. I don't recommend any, like I don't want to say I recommend any of these different services, but I do use a virtual phone number when I'm talking to taxpayers because I don't want them to know my personal cell phone numbers either.
Is there a question about using star 69 to block your number? Is that okay, Tom?
Is it star 69 or 67? I don't remember.
The person wrote star 69.
I don't remember if it's 69 or 67.
Okay.
If that's the one, if 69 is the blocking number, go ahead. I just don't remember.
Got it.
I think I have covered everything, if I'm not wrong. Are there questions out there?
Yeah, I think so too, Tom. I know we scheduled to do this until 1 o'clock. it seems like, Tom, I've covered what I needed to be covered. I think you've covered what you needed to be covered. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so I think it's all in fairness, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to say goodbye for now. I think we'll stay a little bit open to answer some of the questions we're coming into the chat. Again, if after you leave here and you have a question, tomorrow is your chance to give us those questions. Tomorrow we'll be having what's called a volunteer forum, our last Zoom meeting before the start of the tax season. And that'll be your chance to reach out to us. The tables will be turned. You'll be in charge of the meeting. You'll come to us with your questions about anything, about the virtual tax return process, about how to use the tax layer program, about how to use our documents, about the schedule about Fountain House and the schedule about returns themselves, passwords, emails, rooms and chats, how to schedule Google Meets. That's your chance to answer those questions, ask those questions, and we will, to the best of our abilities, answer them. So I thank you so much for being part of our class. Again, we'll stay here a little bit late to answer some of your questions, but I think we're okay. We're in a good spot. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys, and we hope to see you tomorrow. And again, tomorrow, it's from 2 to 4. We'll send you an invitation. It is not mandatory, but we hope to see you there regardless. Take care, everybody. Bye.